another episode of People, Place, and Purpose, the show where we hear stories from business owners, creators, and entrepreneurs about how they got started, what they love most, what challenges them, where they've had to pivot, learn, change, how relationships and networking have helped along the way, and ultimately, how they turn their passion into a successful venture and are living a life they love. I'm your host, Kate Lusko. I love to travel, eat delicious food, and meet and get to know cool people, and I'm so glad you're here today. Let's jump in. Karen Koutsavlis is the founder and chief motivating officer at New England 360 Fitness, whose motto is practical solutions for a healthy lifestyle. As they both knew from our many intersecting paths over the years and discovered more of in this conversation, Karen is a wife, a mom, a lover of bikes, nachos, being outside, and is tremendously dedicated to bettering the health and lives of her clients while also growing and learning as much as she can as a business owner. With that, let's get to today's episode. So good morning. Welcome. I'm so thrilled to have Karen joining me on the People, Place, and Purpose podcast this morning. Thanks for being here, Karen.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
This is such a fun opportunity to sort of incorporate people that I've known in different avenues. I looked back and saw, so our first email exchange was in May of 2013. So very long time ago now, when I was at Stay Work Play, you wrote in wanting to be a blogger. We were wanting to launch like a food, wine, and beer series on the blog, and you wrote in with interest. So sort of fun how things have evolved and the different roles that we've had intersect over the years. We're going to talk about all that stuff today, but I thought it was fun. I wanted to go back and look and see how long ago it actually was.
I'm glad you did that because I was wondering, I was thinking about it, knowing we were having this conversation. I was like, I know it was around that time, but it's crazy.
Yeah. So to start with, I always love to hear people sort of talk about what you did before doing what you do now. So where are you from originally? What has sort of been your background prior to getting to where you are and what you're doing, which we will certainly talk about.
Well, do you want me to go like back to like grew up in Nashua? And
yeah, that would be awesome. Yeah.
So I can't say I've lived in New Hampshire my whole life, but born in Nashua, lived there, family of four, just kind of your typical growing up, I guess. I was very much involved in sports. My dad was my coach for quite a bit of it, softball specifically, but I played volleyball, basketball. I actually, it's kind of an interesting fact. If you look up some prior like Nashua athletes, I come from a street of some pretty well-known ones, like the women's basketball team back when they were on their streak. There were two athletes from that team that I just like totally looked up to, like wanted to be just like them. And a baseball player, and my sister was an athlete. And so yeah, grew up in Nashua, went to school at Colby Sawyer, so stayed in New Hampshire. And my degree there was exercise science. So I feel pretty lucky that I look at kids looking at majors now and questioning what they want to do and feeling like they have to choose what they're going to do the rest of their life. And it's an overwhelming ask. And I'm someone who's lucky that is still doing what I went to school for, with, some twists and turns in between, but I think that can be normal as well. And yeah, back in New Hampshire and living here, raising my family in Auburn.
Here we go. Okay. So Are you one of those people? I've always sort of envied those people who back, as a little kid knew they wanted to be a dentist and then pursued that as a career path. Have you always known that you wanted to get into sort of the health and fitness world? Or when and how did that? Okay. So you're shaking your head. So, was there something when you were a kid, was there something you thought you wanted to be when you grew up?
No. Okay. No, I don't. I almost don't want to admit this, but I used to, this is so funny. I used to tell my parents I was going to grow up and be a cashier because I loved to watch them like push the buttons. Now, of course, there's no buttons on all that. There are, but it's all scanning. But no, I knew I wanted to do stuff. I remember thinking maybe a teacher,
Hmm.
which in a way is a little bit of what I do now.
For sure.
Um, but I can remember looking at colleges and asking myself that same question I just alluded to, like, I don't know what I want to do. And it was sort of, okay, well, what do I like to do? And I love sports. And lo and behold, there were majors in exercise and athletic training. Um, and I looked at those two and I really liked athletic training, helping people, overcome injuries. But then I realized that the exercise part of it was like the preventative side of it.
Hmm.
And I was like, that's cool. Teaching people, learning how the body works and how to prevent all these diseases. And, not all of them are preventable, but so I just kind of was like, this is what I want to do. And I went into it knowing that if I needed or wanted to change, if something else, piqued my interest, I had that opportunity to change. So, but I
Love
didn't.
that.
I stuck with it. I loved it.
Well, and I love the cashier part. I wanted to be a school bus driver when I was
Oh,
little.
okay.
And I think, right, when you either see something or you like, I'm sure I loved my school bus driver when I was in, elementary school or something. And so I'm sure that was like, oh, well, I like her. I want to do what she's doing.
Yeah.
That's really funny. So it's interesting how things have evolved. So talk to me about like when you graduated from college, how did you kind of get to the point of now having your own business? What did that process look like?
So it's funny. I will try not to make this story too long, but I feel like probably anyone in my shoes or who has started a business can probably say the same thing. You feel like your path is different, but that's what makes it all unique and fun and interesting and how we get
Mhm.
from there to here. So I actually was hired by Colby Sawyer the year that I graduated. So I worked for them for a year afterwards. They're the gym that's on campus there is kind of like the town YMCA. So I got
Mm.
to be all of a sudden part of this, little piece that was in this gorgeous town of New London. Now I was really integrated into the community. So running the fitness center there, not running it, but part of it. And I also got to do strength and conditioning for the college athletic teams. So it was a really great introduction for me into here's a little bit of this, here's a little bit of that. And I really liked both aspects of it. Um, and then I had that typical, okay, I've been in New Hampshire, I've got to go to Boston. I want to see if I can make it in the big city, which really isn't that big. So I actually moved back home and I got a job as a personal trainer in Waltham at this high-end facility. I would be leaving Nashua at like 4 o'clock in the morning because I would open the gym at 5.
Oof.
Yeah, my hours were pretty crazy. Um, and I liked that, but it was kind of disappointing to me because now I was in this setting where I was I was hired as a trainer and I thought I was going to just have all these clients and I'd be helping people and it would be wonderful. But they don't tell you about the business side of it. I had to
Mm.
sell personal training to get the clients. So I was looking at these trainers that were just nonstop. They were busy all the time. But I was a year out of school, 23 years old, and, you know, waitressing at night just so I could live in the city because I did end up moving to the city. And so to ask these prices, I had zero. I was like, I hate sales. This is awful. I don't want to do this. So, because you don't learn that in school. My degree was
Right.
all science based. This is the body and how it works. And so, anyway, so I ended up working for Beverly Hospital after that in the clinical exercise physiology role. So I was working with cardiac rehab patients,
Mm.
pulmonary rehab patients, bariatric patients, diabetics, and I loved it. But I am a relationship person, so I really struggled with the emotional side of it because this was an older population.
Mm.
And after 2 years, there were people that passed away and they
Right.
stopped coming in. And I was like, well, I didn't learn that in school either. So I love what I do, but this other side of it is like really draining to me. So I ended up getting a job in corporate wellness. And this was a whole other new avenue at another facility in Charlestown. And again, we were sort of like a community based fitness center, but
Mhm.
we were considered corporate because we offered discounts to the local businesses within the same business park. Um, and I enjoyed that as well. And within a year, I was promoted to my own center at the Federal Reserve Bank in Boston,
Wow. Yep.
which was an amazing experience. So now I'm in this building. There's like, I want to say there were like 30 companies within there at the time. We had this great space. I mean, weights, Nautilus machines, we had a group exercise studio, stretching areas, locker rooms, then the cafeteria with healthy foods and salad bar. And we had great participation in terms of corporate wellness, but it blew me away how many people didn't take advantage of it. To me, it was just, um, it was like, wow, it's right here. So I,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah. So I was training someone one day and he was like, you talk an awful lot about food and I'm trying to work out. And I was like, oh, well, I like it. You were talking about it. And he's like, no, you need to meet my friend who's a chef, who is a very well known chef. Now he's on Food Network all the time. So I ended up going to this event and I met the chef and his wife. And his wife ended up contacting me after and was like, I'm looking for an assistant. You seem like you'd be a really good fit. And this was for a sales job.
Oh,
And
back to the beginning.
yeah. And I was like, what? I would go on interviews because I loved to hear what other companies did, even
Mhm.
if it wasn't a fit. I still am always that, well, you don't know if you don't ask kind of person.
Right.
So she totally sold me on this role on selling food. So sales, I know nothing about food. I mean, I knew like healthy food and like my family's recipes. Um, they ended up offering me this job. Don't ask me how or why. Um, and in that process, she ended up giving her notice. So I went from going to a
Ah,
gym and training people to being the salesperson. And all the accounts were in Boston, but the company was based in New York. So I started remote working like that. They gave me a Blackberry, and I was like, well, I have no idea what this is. How to
well, and
use it.
expecting to be someone's assistant, right? And then sort of,
Yeah.
having the swap. And so who were you selling food to?
Oh my gosh, like high end restaurants and hotels.
Oh,
I mean,
interesting.
it was, when I think back, it must have been so painful for those chefs because I can remember one phone call where they were like, we need heavy cream. And I was like, okay. And then I realized there were like six different kinds of heavy cream. So I had to call them back and they were like, we want this one. And I was like, okay. And then the company in New York was like, well, there's different percentages of fat now. And I was like, you're kidding me. So
Oh my, you learned a lot quickly.
I did. And I think I really loved the challenge of it. And I ended up being successful. I actually proved to myself that I could do it. And I think it was what I liked about it was I, I would talk to the chefs and say, I don't know what this is. Can you tell me how you use this and how you would use this? And I think they liked that because I was never like putting on the hard sale.
Mhm.
So I learned that I didn't have to be a cheesy salesperson or what sometimes is when you think of sales, you just think it's beating the bush all the time. And sure, it's hard work. I like that part of it, but I was able to be myself and learn as I sold. And I loved it. I still talk to a lot of the chefs that I used to sell to. Um, and from there, I was recruited by one of the farms that we sold their products through. Like we were a distributor,
Mhm.
but this farm was in Maine, and so I ended up working for them for about 4 years. traveling, doing sales up and down the East Coast, going to Minnesota and Chicago, and until
So
I
no
was laid
longer
off.
working at the gym. So no longer
Right,
working at the gym through this time. Okay. So
right.
just, and so
Yep.
then you were laid off.
And then I was laid off, and I I wasn't working for anyone in fitness, but I certainly, it was always a passion of mine. So I would say I still kept like a foot in the door with people. Um, but when I was laid off from the farm, I was like, okay, I've proven to myself that I know sales. And this industry, I'm not sure is really for me, but it was a great learning experience. And I also was like, this proved to me back when I was at the Fed, why it's so hard to incorporate fitness and eating healthy into this crazy corporate lifestyle. And that's how New England 360 Fitness was born. It was practical solutions for a healthy lifestyle, because I get it now. I did walk in your shoes. And that, I think, is something that sets me apart when it comes to pitching what I do now to other business leaders. I get it. I've been there. I've had to do the forecasting, the budgeting, the traveling, the planning and all that stuff. And now it makes sense to me. So I can, instead of just guess or say, here, this should work, I can say this is why I put this program together.
So was there, I mean, when you were laid off, did you think about sort of going back to get a traditional role, or were you almost waiting for the moment or the opportunity to go out on your own? I feel like, to me, that seems like such a brave decision point, right? To embark on that journey. So I'm just curious, how you sort of decided this is the time.
That's a great question. I don't know if I think I had maybe started to think of it because throughout that 4 years, I got married, we had our daughter. And so traveling was not, it was an option, but it wasn't my favorite, being away from my new family. I was afraid to miss the food industry just as much as I missed the fitness
Mm-hmm.
industry. Um, but I also remember at one point thinking, okay, if I can sell all this stuff that is not mine and I can tie a story to it, why can't I do that with something that I actually build and develop myself and am clearly passionate about because it's mine? And that was something that pushed me over the edge to do it. And I think, when I was thinking back about when we met, I do remember thinking, I can always write about food and it's not my primary, income. I'm doing like a little bit of both. So,
Yeah, that makes
um,
sense. And I mean, they're so intertwined, right? Sort of wellness, fitness, and what we eat. And I mean, and I know we're going to talk a little bit more about sort of the tenets that you built your business on. But so when you started, what did things look like? What was your company? What were you offering, and who were you targeting? Sounds like
so
corporate sort of professionals, right? People who were in airports and hotels and trying to juggle all of those pieces.
Well, yeah, that was the initial thought, and I really wanted to work with companies because I had such a good experience at the Fed and some of the other places I worked. Um, but I think I fell into that trap that most people who started new business fall into. You tell people you're starting a business and it's fitness and nutrition, and people are like, "Can you train me? Can you coach me?" And it was like, "Yeah, yeah. Oh, and I can do this and I can do that." And I think I lost focus at
Mm-hmm.
times. I still have the folder that I reference sometimes about everything I offered. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, it gives me a headache now."
Like trying to be everything to
But
everyone.
yeah,
Interesting.
because
Yep.
it was this fear. I started my business with $2,000. I said to my husband, "I'm going to do this. I don't need a gym. I'm going to do it this way,"
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy because it's ahead of the on. It was ahead of the online, movement, and I wasn't trying to be that way. I just felt like, well, I could do this, um, and so yeah, it was. I think I lost that focus. I had a couple companies. So the next phase of everything is that I had built up, I had a couple local businesses here that were my clients. I did everything a la carte, which was great. I felt like I was getting somewhere. But when I was pregnant with my son, I learned I was doing way too much. My doctors were like, you have to scale back. And
Mhm.
I had that pressure of like, well, but I'm a business owner. I'm a solo business owner and I can't. I'm teaching classes, I'm meeting people at the gyms to train them, I'm doing this behind the scenes. And I remember calling someone, and there's a really good like part of this story, but I remember calling one of my corporate clients, and she didn't know, but I was totally tearing up. I was like, I can't, I can't do this anymore. And I'm pregnant and I have to put my health first. But I loved going there and I loved teaching the classes. And so that was 2015. And I just last year, that person actually, I now work with the company that they're at now.
Oh, I love
So
that.
it's
That's
like,
great. Yeah.
it's like, okay, so 6 years later, there's still like opportunity. But um, yeah, I had to put my business on hold for a little bit. I didn't put it completely on hold. I scaled way down.
When I saw something just recently on Instagram from an entrepreneur who basically said, like, you have to, it's so easy to get distracted, right? In the nonprofit world, they call it like mission creep, but you have to keep coming back to what is the problem you're trying to solve? Like, what is the purpose of what it is that you're doing? And I'm sure it's both hard not to want to meet people's needs, especially as a relationship person, right? You want to help
Yeah.
people and do the things for them. But also, I'm sure along the way, there are just things that are exciting or interesting or, whatever it might be that even just for you as a person, you mentioned a couple of times when we were chatting earlier, right, about being kind of a lifelong learner, right? I know on your website, you talk about how you're probably always going to have new certifications and new information to share and all of that. And so I'm sure there's some temptation to kind of go down different roads just as a way to experience it as a person. And so how did you eventually, did you sort of, I know a lot of people formally will come up with values or things that they're going to revolve their business around to keep focused, but how did you sort of get to a place of like, okay, here's what we're going to be?
Um, I think it's honestly, I think that's still an ongoing
Mm-hmm.
like evolution of my business. I think like pre-pandemic into the pandemic, it was like, okay, let's just focus on the time and the resources you have and who can you help. And I think that was more like, what is it that I have to give? I've I've said in the past, like I don't have a niche where I can meet people where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
And I still feel that way, but it's been, I would say I've spent the last especially 6 months to a year really honing in on that type A business person that I can relate to. And I've eliminated social media because that's what I found was one of the biggest distractions for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just trying to be authentic with marketing and stuff like that with emails, which I can always be better at certain things. Um, so this part gets hard for me to answer where I'm just going to talk and I know if you edit whatever it's fine. But last year was meant to be the year that I really focused on that, and it was the year I lost my dad. So God, I don't want to get emotional. um, I didn't do much in
Yeah.
terms of marketing or whatever. And I wouldn't say I was um, just surviving, like just doing the basics. Somehow my business doubled last year. And
Congratulations.
thank
I mean,
you.
that's amazing, especially when it sounds like your priorities were elsewhere, right? For good reason.
Yeah. And I think I realized the value of the business to me personally, which is what I want. I want there's a quote that I'm probably going to mess up, but I try to share it often as possible. Um, I might have to get back to you. It's a Tony Robbins quote, but it's like success isn't anything without fulfillment. And I try to live by that like without sounding cheesy, but like what I do, I want to make a difference for
Mhm.
my clients, for the companies I work with, for me and for my family. I want my kids to see me working hard, but I want them to see me playing hard with them as well. And that
Yeah.
there is that balance. And so I can't pinpoint anything from last year because my business was an amazing distraction. And I'm lucky enough to have these clients that somehow like one would spread the word, and I was able to take on a new client, every so often. Um, it was really my most successful year financially, but I did nothing. I did nothing to market it. I just tried to provide the best experience for the people that I was working with, and hope that they trusted me, and clearly they did.
Absolutely.
And it makes me excited. Um, and like I just wonder what the potential is for when I am a little bit more systematic and,
Right.
using these things. So,
Well, so that was one of the things I wondered as, as someone who likes to learn new things, have you found through the course of your business when you want to try something new, are you more apt to learn and figure it out on your own? Are you hiring people who sort of, right? I feel like there's different schools of thought for business owners that, people recognize like, I'm not good at X, so I'm just going to hire someone rather than kind of forcing myself to figure it out. But I think other people use it as an opportunity, like with this podcast, right? I'd never edited anything before. And sure, people hire, even for part-time sort of things, people hire production people. But for me, at least for now, I think it's an opportunity to try it and see how it goes and test my brain in different ways. But I'm curious, how has that been for you? Which ways have you gone with different things?
um, I've tried going down the route of looking at other companies or, programs that can help me. I've heard quite a few times that like I'm just too small. I'm not quite where I need to be for them to help me, which is like, ugh, okay, I finally built up the nerve and the strength to say I'm going to pay for this. I
Hmm.
know that this will be worth it if I pay for it. And then it's like, ugh, all right, I guess I'm on my own again. So what I have found recently is sort of it's like an online group coaching that is this community that has been extremely helpful and valuable in terms of yes, I'm still doing a lot myself, but it's validated through quite a few others, and we have this chance to share our questions and successes and hop on a monthly group call, and there's no limits to what you can ask. So that's given me a little bit more clarity, so I'm like, okay, if I can get to the next level, then maybe I'll be big enough for whoever it is. But this group that I'm in also has that next level. So I feel like when I'm at that point, I won't be starting the search all over again.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'm a control freak. I want to do a lot of things myself. And I know I need to let go where a lot of what I do is personal. I mean, I do personal coaching for people. So I don't want to just hand some of that off.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, no, I've learned a lot of new skills in terms of technology. It still scares the crap out of me. Um, I think that I'm gonna have to eventually have a little more of a presence on social media. I
Hmm.
think it's just I'd be silly not to take advantage of that. Um, and that's where I probably would look to hire someone. Um, even if, college age kids looking for something because they get it. They get it way more than I ever will. And I feel like it's such a distraction. So if I post something and I need to post something, next thing I know, I'm looking at, animal videos for God knows what.
Right, those rabbit holes, you just yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I mean, social media, I remember years ago when I had started at an organization, someone had said, like, "Just take 5 minutes every day and just post." And I mean, it's just to do it well, it's so much more than 5 minutes, especially as things have evolved, it's all about that authenticity. And so you have to be present, right? It's not just passively put a picture out there and hope that people like it, right? You engage in conversations and you join groups, and it takes a lot of time to really do it well and to do it authentically, right? To not just sort of do the things you're supposed to do by checking the boxes, but again, to sort of be present. Um, and it can be so valuable. But you talked about you have sort of a client on the West Coast. Like, how did that come to be? I'm curious if that
Yeah.
has any connection to the technology.
Okay. So I love meeting people. I just think we're like coming up on another Olympic season. I went to the Olympics in Vancouver and I was so excited to meet people from all over the world. I'm going to give you this really funny story because I know you love New Hampshire stories as well. So,
Yeah, of course.
so my friend and I went in 2010, and we had read that like people trade pins at the Olympics. It's what you do. You get pins and you trade with people from all over the world. I was just so excited to be there. I brought like this pile of pins from New Hampshire. And I would go up to everybody with like the lanyards or the backpacks. And I was like, hey, I'm from New Hampshire. Would you be interested in trading a pin? And everybody was like, nope. Do you know where I got these pins? I'm not giving them up. Everywhere was like a slam door in my face. I was
Oh,
like, really disappointing. And my friend we were separated for a little bit. She ended up coming back and she was not really into the pin thing. And she comes back, she's like, I just traded a pin with someone from France. And I was like, what do you mean? This is so not fair. So it was our last day there, and I'm in a gift shop, and um, and I hear these people speaking Greek, and I was learning the Greek language at the time. And so I went up to them and I was like, excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you speaking Greek? And they were like, yeah. And I was like, it's so great to meet you. I'm from New Hampshire. Like, would you guys be interested in trading pins? Would you believe they look at me and they go, we're from New Hampshire too. And they traded
oh,
a New Hampshire pin for a New Hampshire pin. So anyway, I travel,
that's
I talk to
funny.
everybody, and yes, I met this guy on a bike ride in Idaho, and we rode our bike together for a good 40 miles.
Hmm.
And we didn't even talk after the race, even though we were there. We were just pretty exhausted. And we connected on social media. We've stayed connected. And I posted something a couple weeks ago that he read, and he reached out and was just like, this really resonated with me. And we had such a great conversation on the bikes. And you're someone I looked up to. And so, yeah, so now I'm coaching him. And I never would have guessed that,
Yeah.
3 years ago, that we'd be here now. And he's awesome. He's crushing it. And I'm super psyched to be by his side.
That's great. Congratulations. I love the small
Thank
world
you.
story about the
Yeah.
Olympics, but then also, right, the relationships, the value of networking and making those connections. That's really awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So I'm curious, so you're the owner, but you're also the chief motivating officer. So I'd love to hear a little bit about, I mean, what does your work look like when it comes to motivating people and working with people and, trying to get them to do the things that they should or want to do?
So, yeah, I came up with that title because it makes people smile first and foremost. So, I think anytime like fitness, health, exercise, nutrition, unfortunately, our industry makes it seem like there's a lot of rules. And I want people to understand you can live a life without restrictions or limitations, feel good and move great, and really enjoy your life while maintaining your health. Um, but it can be so intimidating. So I created that to just kind of be like, hey, it's also fun. Like it has to be fun, and I'm going to motivate you. The key is people think they need to wait for motivation. but really it's action that breeds motivation.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of the work I do with people now is on behaviors and figuring out what their why is, which we hear a lot about, but I think it's something that's easier said than done. So I really try to pull from them, what is it? Why do you want to do this and what motivates you? That's what these words behind me are. People submitted their words for 2022 so that it's something that they, what is your goal and what is the meaning behind it? And it's my job to keep reminding you of that.
Hmm.
And oftentimes with coaching, what I've seen or training is people, they apologize. Oh, I'm sorry I didn't do this because this, because life happened.
Right.
And sometimes people feel they can only check in when things are good. And I'm like, hey, nope, you hired me. I'm here really more for when the times are bad. So I'm going to make this easy and less intimidating for you during these times because I know you're going to do it when it's good. You need to tap into me when the times are not so great. And don't think that I'm judging you. I'm
Hmm.
doing what you hired me to do. So, so that's kind of how that came about.
And so tell me a little bit about what are you doing now, right? So as things have evolved, like what are the services that you're offering for individuals, for companies? I know you have a couple special sort of maybe short time programs. What are all the things that you have brewing?
So the main focus is I still want to work with companies because I feel like that's where people spend most of their time working.
Hmm.
And I want to change that work life balance to life work balance, and teach people, even though I'm primarily a fitness coach, it doesn't mean that you have to exercise and have all these soul crushing workouts to lead a healthy lifestyle. Also that your professional success shouldn't come at the expense of your health. And so tapping into the companies and reaching out locally is something that I'm trying to do more of now and just let the companies know who I am. I do private coaching with individuals,
Hmm.
but I have limited that to a certain number of people because it's not the number of people I train that counts. To me, it's really having that quality connection, and it's not just do this exercise for 3 sets of 10. It's why are we doing this particular exercise for this many repetitions, or maybe it's just daily movement. Um, so I work with individuals, I work with companies, and then I am updating some of the online programs that I've offered in the past. Um, that's been kind of back to your question about how do I learn things. I've tried certain softwares that I end up spending too much of my time being like a support desk, and that's
Hmm.
not how I want to spend my time teaching people how to use a certain app. So,
Ah, that
so
makes
I'm
sense.
yeah, so I'm trying to just update all the information because I have almost 9 years of content now that when people do it and try it, they love it. So I want to put it back out there, but in an easier way for people to access and be able to take advantage of it. So it's really those three key areas individually from like a company standpoint, and then some online stuff. So
And I know you have a focus on sleep, nutrition, movement. Talk a little bit about, what are sort of those pillars for your company?
yeah, so a healthy lifestyle is really not just about exercising until you're sore. And unfortunately, that's what we sort of fall into this mold as a personal trainer, quote unquote. Um, but I want to work with people as a whole. So i- after training people for a few years and realizing that even if the fitness and nutrition isn't is there and it's on point, if you're totally stressed out and you're not sleeping, you're not going to get anywhere. um, and that really took shape for me too. This is something I share with my corporate clients. When I was traveling and doing the business thing, even with my knowledge of exercise and eating right, and I knew how to pack things at the hotel and what would be the best to sustain me through the day. and getting the sleep, if you're not managing the stress and breathing and things like that. I mean, I was
Mhm.
in my 30s and I was in the cardiologist's office. And I
Oh
think it's
boy.
important that I share that with people because
Mhm.
there's a there's a distinct difference between knowing and executing. And I think business people, especially, they know what they're supposed to do, but it's prioritizing those times. So finding the balance between fitness, nutrition, stress management, and sleep, it can be overwhelming when someone tries to embark on a new healthy lifestyle and they don't know where to start or how to put it together. So that's how, yeah, those are the key pillars of my program. If I'm working with anyone, we talk about all of those things. We talk about digestion. I warn people I'm going to ask you questions that you may be uncomfortable asking, but that could be the one reason why, this thing A is not working, or why this thing B is happening or causing you pain. Um, and then the underlying layer is fun. I also think that with all those things, it's important to have an element of fun. Otherwise, you're not going to want to do it.
For sure. Yeah, that's really great. And how do you, right? There's that old adage about the cobbler's children have no shoes, right? So how do you make sure for yourself? I mean, you just talked about, right? You knew all the things. And of course, this was years ago, but implementing them, if, was it different? How do you find that life work balance for yourself and make sure that you're doing the things that you know and not just sort of giving all of yourself to your clients?
It's it's a constant effort. And I want to be fully transparent with people about that because even someone who lives and breathes it, this is, this is I love to do this, but it's prioritizing. So I do a ton of writing and I start my day with, all right, I actually start the day before because preparation to me is huge. So the night before, I write down what are my tasks for the next day with the things that I want to do. And I prioritize them. And like any, I would say, entrepreneur, trying to remind myself that I'm not aiming for perfection. It's just progress. I want to feel good with what I'm doing. I want to feel good with what I'm putting out there to my clients and to my family. And I am certainly far from perfect, but a work in progress always. And some days I don't write everything down because I forget to, because life happens,
Mhm.
and that's okay. It means the next day I definitely don't forget to do that because I know how my day went. It's like, oh,
Well, and
um,
so much tells us that consistency, right? That sort of that matters more than being perfect, that it's just sort of what you do generally, not that you do it perfectly.
absolutely. And I have started to say this to my clients the last few months. It's consistency over intensity. You know you're
Yeah.
going to do the
Yeah.
work when you feel good. It's doing the smallest amount that you're capable of on the days that you don't feel like it. Um, and that's what matters the most. That's what is
Hmm.
going to give you that better feeling. And whether that's with your workouts or your meal preparation or your sleep, you have to get away from the rigidity and the rules of this. I think it's smart to create some sort of rules or structure for you, but there has to be flexibility within the boundaries so that, again, it's not perfection. It's okay, well, this didn't go as I planned. But if you think at everything that happens in your life, not any, I can think of so many things that didn't go as planned. So, having that base structure in there of how you do things in those systems, it's a process though. It's absolutely a process. So I feel like that's a lot of what I help people with is the structure and the process. And then I'm that reminder like, hey, did you do the bare minimum?
Right. Well, and it sounds like you've had a lot of experience with sort of trying things, right, throughout your life, like trying this and taking pieces of it and bringing it back. And so I would imagine because of the personal approach you're using, there's a little bit of that with clients, right? There's a little bit of like, okay, this, instead of having them, like this is a silly example, but I use a water app where I grow plants because I'm a wicked, as you can see, my background. I love plants. And so it sort of
Yeah.
translates a thing that I want to pay attention to and be aware of to make sure that I'm drinking enough water. But it sort of gamifies it in a way that's fun for me to keep track of things, right? So I'm sure that there's some of that personalization and trial and error and figuring out, pulling from your experience and applying it to people and seeing what works for them.
Exactly. And I think what you just said too about making it fun and
Right.
gamifying it and taking these snippets of things. I mean, people come to probably anyone that they're going to for help or assistance with something. You hear these things that sound so crazy. They're really not. Like I tell people, tell me what you've tried because it doesn't, I've heard it all. I've heard quite a bit. I've seen quite a bit. I mean, spend a week in a gym and you will see some crazy exercises that you didn't think were a thing because they're not. But
I'm
people
sure.
are doing them because they saw it on Instagram. And I tell people, I'm like, I don't tell you how to eat. I don't tell you what to eat. I'm not going to tell you how to exercise. I'm going to teach you how to do it safely and tell you what I think you should do based on your goals, which is completely personal and customized. But there's always these conversations of, well, what worked for you in the past and what didn't? Because I think there's a lot of crazy diets out there. But if any of my clients say, I want to try keto, well, I may not be a keto person myself, but I'm your coach. So you're my teammate. So I'm going to say, okay, if you really want to do this, I'll support you, but let's make sure we have a plan. And
Mhm.
then from there, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I always try to say, tweak it and make it your own. If you've tried keto and vegan and plant based and vegan after six, like all these things, well, what were your favorite parts of that?
Yeah.
And take that and make it your own. The only rules that there are the ones you're putting on yourself. So you can make it your own. And as long as it fits into your lifestyle, it can work for you. It's not like a yes or no. And the all in or the nothing mentality is what I would say, a lot of my time trying to help people differentiate between.
Very interesting. Yeah, of that balance, right? It all comes back to that balance. So I want to take a step back and, you know, this podcast is about business owners. Like, I think it takes such bravery and I just am in awe of people who step out on their own. But I also recognize and don't want it to all just be, sunshine and rainbows. So I'm curious, as you think about the life of a business owner, like what's hard? What are the things that just make it a challenge for you?
Well, especially for me, like it's just me. So I will get an idea and I don't have a team to turn around to in a
Mm,
meeting and say, what do you think of this? What would be the steps to take? I have to kind of write it all down and now I'm at the point where I'm like, does this fit into my focus
mhm.
currently or not? Is it worth my time? Um, I think also, I grew up as an athlete. I love team sports. So I think this is in general the hardest thing for me. Like if I make a phone call to someone, a cold call, and I am shut down, I have no one to turn around to say, keep going. So, which is fine. Like I'm okay. I totally know that there's going to be way more no's than yeses
Right.
with this. If I thought it was the other way around, then I should have turned around and ran long ago. Um, and I do think part of it is like that learning process because I don't know what the timeline is for anything and how much time do I have to do this or that, or by the time I create this, is everybody else going to be moved on to something else? Is it even worth it? Or um, social media is a struggle for me. Technology is a struggle for me, yet it's how my business has stayed afloat.
Mhm.
So I think it's that fear of the unknown. Am I doing the right things? Am I putting the right message out and am I doing it in the right way? Or do I have other options? There's a lot. There's a
Well, and
lot
so
of
on the
challenges.
contrary, what do you love? Like, what makes it worth kind of going through all of those pieces and the uncertainty and the, doing it on your own, like what do you love so much that it makes all of that absolutely worth it?
Um, I love the big picture of it all. I love the challenge. Aside from the time with my family, which I love each and every day, coaching is one of my favorite things to do. Having conversations with people, and it's one of the best parts of my day when I get to coach people and work on programs. Um, I I love I as much as I'm scared of the uncertainty, I also am so excited by it. Like I have a therapist. I have no problems sharing that. And I was saying to him at one point, I was like, I'm having trouble sleeping because I'm so excited to get up the next day and
Amazing.
work
That
on what I'm doing.
mhm.
And he was like, "There's nothing wrong with that." I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not sleeping." um, I I I I love seeing people get to that next level where they're like, I feel so great, or I'm doing this. And it's almost like the same excitement as like seeing my kids take their first steps. It's
Mhm.
this elation, as cheesy as it sounds. Like when someone messages me and says, you know, I haven't moved this much in years and my back isn't hurting me and I'm so grateful. Like that
Priceless.
makes more than my day. I mean,
Yeah.
that is completely, yeah, it's invaluable. And so I love it.
That's amazing. All right. So, as sort of a final question before I ask you to tell us where everybody can find you, but do you have recommendations for books or things that, websites that you use or you direct clients to? Obviously, you have a blog, lots of valuable. I saw, kind of it looks like people submit questions and you have stuff on there about food and the holidays we just had, right? So certainly your blog, but
Mhm.
are there go-to resources that you suggest to clients?
Yes. So, okay, one of them is called Insight Timer. Have you heard of it?
I
You
actually
must have heard
use
of
it
it.
for
Okay.
teaching yoga classes.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love that app. I use it myself and I tell my clients to. Um, I also, journaling, getting back to just the idea of journaling, putting paper to pen. I don't discourage use on the phone or a tablet, whatever it might be, but I think there's something really powerful about journaling and just writing. And I try and remind people you don't have to sit down and write a novel. What's your one intention? What's your word for the day? Don't we put so much pressure on
Mm,
ourselves and compare ourselves to others. And it's like, focus on what you want. Um, there's a book I love called The Practice of Groundedness. Brad Stulberg is the author, and I really enjoyed that book. Um,
I've not heard of that one,
I,
so I'm going to add it to my list for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I heard a really interesting uh, thought the other day, which was don't read like the life learning or the, I don't know, I guess it's self help books or like growth mindset books before bed because you can get so
Mm.
excited and not. So I've really tried to take that to heart, and I'm reading a book that my mom gave me now. Um, but yeah, I would say those, did I give you three things? Insight timer, practice of groundedness, and journaling. I would say
Mhm.
those are like my three things that people might be surprised to not hear me say something about fitness or exercise, but I do firmly believe that you have to have a positive mindset before you can have any physical changes. So making sure that you take those steps and you actually understand what's important to you is step one.
Awesome. Thank you for that. All right. So now tell us again who you are, what your company is, and where people can find you out there.
Yeah. So my name's Karen Koutsavlis, and I am the owner, chief motivating officer of New England 360 Fitness. We go by NE360 Fitness for short. So our website is ne360fitness.com. You can email me directly, Karen at ne360fitness.com. And I do have a Facebook page. You can keep your eye on it. um, LinkedIn, hopefully there'll be a little more activity. So I want to put some good information out for people. But I'd say website, email, those are the best ways to reach out right now.
Awesome. This was so fantastic. I love, again, with the relationship side of things, I love that we've had so many opportunities over the years to cross paths in different ways and find different opportunities. And I certainly learned things, right? That as much as I maybe thought I knew, the majority of your journey, there were nuances today. And I love that you shared that story with us today. So thanks for
Yeah.
being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored that you asked me, and I'm excited to uh, just hear other stories too, because this is what, keeps me going. So,
Awesome. Thank you.
yeah. Thanks, Kate.
This conversation with Karen is absolutely filled with gems. There's just so much I want to reiterate. On to the takeaways from today's episode. Some things you truly cannot learn until you experience them firsthand. You need to be willing to admit when you don't know something and ask to be taught. Difficult decisions don't have to be forever. There's value in truly understanding the pain points of your audience or your clients. Focus is important. It can be easy to lose it, especially if you're trying to please others without continually remembering your why. There is a distinct difference between knowing and executing. In the health and wellness world, you'll likely need to focus on cultivating a positive mindset before you will begin to see any physical changes. And finally, people often think they need to wait for motivation, but really, it's action that breeds motivation. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of People, Place, and Purpose. Please remember to subscribe, rate, review, and leave a comment. As a new podcast, your support really means a lot. And if you know someone who might be inspired by this story, please share it with them. I would also love to engage with you directly, so please find us on Instagram at People, Place, Purpose. I'm so excited for us to continue to learn and grow and discover new things together, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Until then, it's a beautiful day for an adventure. Get out there and explore.